He was James Vance, a New York real estate titan worth billions. She was Eleonora, the graceful, silent wife he'd decided to trade in for a younger model. When he served her divorce papers in their $80 million penthouse, he offered her a generous severance package to disappear quietly. But James made one fatal mistake. In the cold, sterile courtroom, his wife didn't ask for alimony. She asked for an eviction. This is the incredible story of how Eleonora Vance revealed she wasn't just his wife. She was his benefactor, his bank, and his boss. And she was foreclosing on his entire life. The air in the grand ballroom of the flagship Vance Hotel New York crackled with the energy of 1,000 champagne flutes and $1 billion. It was the annual Vance Vanguard Gala, the social and financial pinnacle of the Manhattan autumn season, and at its center, basking in the glow of bespoke crystal chandeliers, was James Vance. James was a man carved from polished arrogance. At 52, he possessed a full head of silver-streaked hair, a jawline that defied gravity, and a custom-tailored Tom Ford suit that probably cost more than a family car. He moved through the crowd not as a host, but as a king surveying his court. His empire was Vance Hotels, a constellation of 54 luxury properties spanning the globe, from London to Tokyo. And on his arm, as always, was Eleonora Vance. Where James was a solar flare, Eleonora was moonlight. 10 years his junior, she was a woman of quiet, severe beauty. Tonight, she wore a midnight blue Schiaparelli gown, simple and elegant. Her only jewelry was a set of antique sapphire earrings, the Rossi sapphires, an heirloom from her Italian family. While James shook hands, laughed his booming laugh, and accepted accolades for his vision, Eleonora smiled, nodded, and murmured pleasantries. To the glittering assembly of bankers, socialites, and media, their roles were clear. James was the genius, the builder, the visionary. Eleonora was the secret weapon, as Vogue had once called her, the perfect hostess, the chair of the charity boards, the elegant, cultured background against which James's brilliance shone all the brighter. She was, in the crudest terms of their world, the ultimate trophy wife. "The London acquisition was a masterstroke, James," boomed Senator Markham, clapping him on the back. "We saw the opportunity, Senator, and we seized it," James replied, his voice a smooth baritone. "The Vance brand is about audacity. It's about taking risks." Eleonora, standing just behind his shoulder, resisted the urge to correct him. The opportunity had been identified by her team of forensic accountants. The audacity had been a $300 million wire transfer she authorized from a trust in Geneva. But she said nothing. She just smiled. Later in the evening, James took the stage to announce the company's new global ambassador. In an age of tired traditions, the Vance brand must look to the future, to new energy, to new vision. He gestured to the side of the stage. "Please welcome Ms. Serafina Hayes." Out stepped a woman who was the physical opposite of Eleonora. Serafina was barely 25, a confection of blonde hair extensions, a surgically perfected figure, and a glittering gold dress that seemed sprayed onto her body. She was a mega-influencer, a creature of fleeting digital fame, with 30 million followers who watched her pout, pose, and promote. Serafina glided to James, placing a hand on his chest that lingered far too long. "James is like the most incredible mentor," she breathed into the microphone. "Working with him, it's just everything." James put his arm around her waist, and the flashbulbs of the press exploded. Across the room, Eleonora watched. She noted the way his hand gripped Serafina's hip. She saw the proprietary gleam in his eye, the same look he gave a building he was about to acquire. She felt no jealousy, no rage. She felt only the cold, quiet click of a tumbler falling into place. The gala raised $10 million for the Children's Hospital. James was lauded on page 6 the next day as the King of New York. Eleonora's photo was captioned, Eleonora Vance in Schiaparelli. 3 nights later, the applause had faded. The penthouse on Central Park South was silent, save for the hum of the city 70 floors below. James walked into the grand salon where Eleonora was reading a book on Byzantine art. He wasn't wearing his suit. He was in a casual, expensive cashmere sweater. He looked like a man about to run an errand. He didn't sit. He simply placed a thick, leather-bound folder on the marble coffee table. Eleonora, we need to talk. She placed her book down, marking her page. What is this, James? It's time to be honest, he said, pacing. He wasn't looking at her. He was looking at the skyline, his skyline. We've had a good run, a great run, but we're different people. I'm still growing. I'm evolving. And you're comfortable. And I'm not in love with you anymore. The words hung in the sterile, air-conditioned space. Eleonora's expression didn't change. I see. I've been seeing someone else, he continued, gaining momentum. He mistook her silence for weakness. Serafina Hayes. You met her at the gala. It's real, Eleonora. It's passionate. She understands my drive. I'm going to marry her. I see, Eleonora repeated, her voice perfectly level. James finally looked at her, annoyed by her placid response. Is that all you can say? Look, I don't want to fight. I have my lawyers, Thorne and Associates, draft a separation agreement. It's generous. More than generous. He tapped the folder. It's a $50 million flat payment. You keep the Aspen condo and the art collection. It's a clean break. You'll be set for life. You can go back to your museums and your charities, and I can move on. Sign it, and let's not make this ugly. He waited, expecting tears or pleading, or perhaps the satisfying smash of a crystal vase. Eleonora finally stood. She walked not to him, but to the window, standing beside him, looking out at the city. You've built all this, James, she said softly. The lights, the towers, the Vance name shining so brightly. He preened. Yes, I did. She turned to face him, and for the first time, he saw the cold fire behind her quiet eyes, the look of an empress, not a wife. You're right about one thing, James, she said, her voice like splintering ice. You're not in love with me. You were in love with my money, and you've made one catastrophic mistake. What are you talking about? $50 million is a fortune. No, James, she interrupted. Your mistake was believing your own press. You think this is your empire. You've forgotten who funded the invasion. She picked up her phone from the table. She made a single call. Amelia, she said, her voice calm and lethal. It's Eleonora Vance. He's done it. Please execute the Nightingale Protocol. Yes, effective immediately. She hung up. James laughed, a short, barking sound. Nightingale Protocol? What is this? A spy movie? Are you threatening me, Nora? You're a housewife. You're nothing without me. You'll be destroyed. Eleonora simply picked up her book, took a sip of her cooling tea, and sat back down. You should call your lawyer, James. You're going to need him, and you might want to pack a bag. The doorman will be escorting you out in 10 minutes. James stared at her, utterly baffled. This was not in his script. He was the Titan. She was the accessory. Escort me out, he sputtered. Eleonora, this is my penthouse. My name is on the deed. No, James, she said, turning a page in her book. Your brand's name is on the deed. And as of your admission of adultery, you no longer control the brand. Please, call your lawyer. Mr. Thorne, he's about to have a very, very bad night." A vein throbbed in James's temple. This was defiance. It was pathetic. He pulled out his phone and speed-dialed Matthew Thorne, his shark of a lawyer. "Matthew!" he barked. "She's being ridiculous. She's threatening me, talking about some nightingale thing. You need to call her lawyer, and shut this down. She's delusional." He listened, his smug expression slowly dissolving into a mask of confused rage. "What do you mean you just received a notice of termination? From who? A trust? What damn trust? Matthew, what the hell is going on?" The intercom buzzed. Eleonora pressed the button. "Yes, Carlos." "Mrs. Vance." The head doorman's voice came through, polite but firm. "The two gentlemen from the private security firm are here, as you requested. They are waiting for Mr. Vance in the lobby." "Thank you, Carlos," Eleonora said. "He's on his way down." James's face was ashen. "You can't do this. I'll freeze the accounts. I'll ruin you." "You can't freeze what you've never controlled," Eleonora said, not bothering to look up. "The corporate cards were deactivated 60 seconds ago. So was your key fob for this elevator. You have 10 minutes to remove your personal effects. After that, my security will remove you." The reality of the coup, so swift and total, was more than his ego could process. He was James Vance. He didn't get evicted. He stormed into the master bedroom, his bedroom, and found his closet doors locked. His personal safe, where he kept his watches and private papers, would not accept his code. "Eleonora!" he roared. She appeared in the doorway, holding his black leather overnight bag. "I had your assistant pack this for you this afternoon. Everything you'll need for the next few days. Your favorite sweater is in there." She had known. She had planned this. "You," he choked. "You, snake. All these years. Pretending." "I wasn't pretending, James," she said, her voice tinged with a genuine cold sadness. "I was your partner. I was loyal to our marriage. But I am also the guardian of my family's legacy. A legacy you just tried to trade for a 25-year-old with bad grammar. My loyalty has its limits. Adultery, it turns out, was the boundary." He snatched the bag from her hand. He marched to the elevator, his mind racing. This was a trick, a legal maneuver. Matthew would fix this. By morning, she would be the one on the street. "You will regret this, Eleonora," he snarled as the elevator doors chimed. "You have no idea who you just declared war against." "On the contrary," she replied as the doors began to close. "I know exactly who. A middle manager from New Jersey who got lucky. The war is over, James. This is just the liquidation." The doors slid shut, leaving James alone in the mirrored box, plunging toward a life he didn't recognize. He spent that night at the Vance Soho, only to have the night manager, white-faced and terrified, inform him at 3 a.m. that his corporate suite had been revoked. His credit cards, the Amex Centurion, the Platinum Visa, were all declined. He, James Vance, had to take a $200,000 Patek Philippe watch off his wrist and give it to the manager as a deposit for the room. The next morning, the war began, and it was a slaughter. The first shot was a press release, not from Vance Hotels, but from a company no one had ever heard of, St. Elmo Holdings, Geneva. As of 9 p.m. EST yesterday, St. Elmo Holdings, the sole equity owner of the Vance Hotel Group, has terminated the employment of Mr. James Vance as CEO, citing a material breach of contract. Mr. Vance no longer holds any position within the company, nor any financial stake. An interim CEO has been appointed from the board. The Wall Street Journal and Bloomberg scrambled. Who the hell was St. Elmo Holdings? James and Matthew Thorne were holed up in Thorne's 50th floor office, choking on panic. "It's a holding company, James," Matthew said, his face grey. "A Swiss trust. All the documents you signed, the seed money, the expansion funds, it all came from them. I thought it was just a complex tax shelter." "It is a tax shelter," James yelled. "My tax shelter." "No," said a new voice. A woman walked into the conference room. She was in her late 40s, with sharp features and an even sharper grey suit. She carried a single slim briefcase. "It's a tax shelter." "Who the hell are you?" Thorne demanded. "I am Amelia Harding," the woman said, counsel for St. Elmo Holdings and personal counsel for Miss Eleonora Rossi Vance. "You can call me Miss Harding." "And you?" she said, fixing James with a dead-eyed stare. "Are trespassing in a building owned by my client. But I'll let that slide for now. I'm here to accept your service of the divorce papers." Matthew Thorne scoffed, regaining his footing. "Good. Then you've seen our offer. $50 million. It's beyond generous. We'll fight any attempt to contest it." Amelia Harding smiled, a thin, reptilian action. "Mr. Thorne, my client has no interest in Mr. Vance's $50 million because he doesn't have $50 million. He has," she checked her notes, "a personal brokerage account with $1.2 million of 401k from his job before he met Eleonora, and a leased Range Rover. My client is, however, willing to be generous." She opened her briefcase and slid a single piece of paper across the table. It was a counteroffer. James read it, and his vision blurred. This is an insult," he whispered. Matthew Thorne read it. "This is a joke. You're offering him $500,000, a one-time payment, and he has to sign a universal NDA and a non-compete?" "That's the severance package, Mr. Thorne," Amelia said, standing. "For his 15 years of service, it's $500,000 more than he's entitled to under the Nightingale Protocol, which his infidelity triggered. Take the deal, Mr. Vance. It's the last act of kindness Eleonora will ever show you." "We will see you in court," James snarled. "I built this empire with my bare hands." "Then you won't mind proving it in discovery," Amelia smiled. "Oh, and by the way," she added, pausing at the door, "Ms. Serafina Hayes's Global Ambassador contract was also terminated this morning. Cause redundancy. Have a lovely day, gentlemen." The next 3 months were a brutal education for James Vance. The man who had once graced the cover of Forbes, the Hotel King, was now tabloid fodder. Page 6 ran the headline, "Vance Quished, Billionaire Booted by Silent Wife." Serafina Hayes, realizing her billionaire boyfriend was now couch-surfing at a friend's borrowed apartment, had vanished. Her Instagram, once filled with fawning posts about her king, was suddenly scrubbed of all mention of him. Her final text to him read, "This is way too much drama for me. My agent says it's bad for my brand. Good luck, I guess." James, fueled by pure, unadulterated hubris, was convinced this was a legal nightmare he could win. He and Matthew Thorne countersued, claiming James was the de facto founder and partner, and that Eleonora had used undue influence and fraudulent structures to rob him of his life's work. This led them to a sterile conference room for the deposition. James, in a borrowed suit, sat across from Amelia Harding. "Let's start at the beginning, Mr. Vance," Harding began, her voice dispassionate. "You claim you founded Vance Hotels. Where did you get the initial capital to purchase the first property, the old Knickerbocker, in 2008? "As I've always said," James said, leaning into the camera, "I secured private funding. It was my vision, my pitch." "Who was the funder, Mr. Vance?" "It was a group of investors. I can't recall the specific names. It was 15 years ago." Harding slid a document across the table. "This is a wire confirmation from 2008 for 150 million. It's from an entity called St. Elmo Trust. Are these the investors you're referring to? James's jaw tightened. They were the backers. I was the general partner, the mind behind it. Were you? Let's look at the corporate charter for Vance Hotels, Inc., filed in 2008. Who is listed as the sole shareholder and officer? Matthew Thorne objected. Relevance? It's the central question of the case, Counselor, Harding replied. Who is the owner? Mr. Vance, please read the name. James stared at the page. Eleonora Rossi. That's Eleonora Vance before she took your name, correct? It was a legal formality, James snapped. For tax purposes. She didn't know anything about business. She didn't. Let's move to the 2011 acquisition of the London property. You were over-leveraged on the Miami build-out. You were, in fact, 3 weeks from defaulting on a loan from Deutsche Bank. Correct? We had a cash flow issue. It was temporary. You were about to go bankrupt, Harding stated. And then another wire. $300 million. From which entity, Mr. Vance? St. Elmo. And the 2014 Asia expansion, a $1.2 billion fund. Source? St. Elmo. The 2017 buyout of the St. Regis portfolio, $2.1 billion. Source? James was silent. His face was a thundercloud. Let me rephrase, Harding said. In 15 years, Mr. Vance, can you point to a single project, a single acquisition, or a single corporate expenditure that was not funded, directly or indirectly, by the St. Elmo Trust? He had nothing. I contributed my expertise, my brand, my name. Ah, yes, your name. Vance Hotels. Whose idea was that? It was mine. Was it? Harding pulled out a new document. This is the original branding proposal from 2008. The marketing firm suggested the Rossi Collection, or the St. Elmo Grand. This memo from Eleonora Rossi to the branding team says, and I quote, "Let's use Vance. It's a strong, simple American name. It will be the public face." She gave you the name, Mr. Vance. She branded you. The room was suffocating. James was not a partner. He was a mascot. Harding continued, her voice a relentless scalpel. You claim to be the mind behind the business. Were you aware that the St. Elmo Trust held a majority, non-voting stake in the tech company Aura Core, which designed your revolutionary booking software? No. Were you aware that the trust was the primary lender for Blackwood Construction, the firm that built your last 12 hotels? No. Were you aware that your wife, Eleonora, holds an MBA from INSEAD in addition to her Master's in Art History, that she has sat on the board of her family's trust since she was 21, that she personally negotiated the debt structures for the London and Tokyo acquisitions? Were you aware, Mr. Vance, that your trophy wife was, in fact, your shadow CEO? James was visibly shaking. He had been so consumed by his own reflection that he never bothered to look at the person holding the mirror. And now, Mr. Vance, Harding said, her voice dropping, let's talk about the Nightingale Protocol. A specific clause in your prenuptial agreement. Article 7. You did read your prenup, didn't you? It was a standard wealthy woman protects her assets agreement. Matthew looked it over. Then Matthew should have advised you, Harding said, that Article 7 was anything but standard. It states that you were granted the title of CEO and a 1% profit share, your salary, on the condition of absolute fidelity. It further states that in the event of adultery, verified by the Trust's investigators, oh yes, Mr. Vance, they've been documenting you and Ms. Hayes for 6 months, your 1% share is voided and your employment is terminated, for cause, with no severance. She closed her binder. You didn't just cheat on your wife, Mr. Vance. You breached the fidelity clause of your employment contract. You didn't file for divorce. You got yourself fired. Matthew Thorne looked like he was going to be sick. He'd been outlawyered, not by Harding, but by Eleonora, 15 years prior. James Vance finally understood. He wasn't in a divorce proceeding. He was in an HR review. And he had failed. To understand the Nightingale Protocol, one had to understand Eleonora Rossi. And to understand her, one had to go back to Lake Como, 2007. James Vance was 37, a charismatic, handsome, and deeply frustrated manager at a mid-level Marriott. He had colossal dreams and a credit score that disqualified him from a car loan. His small loan from his father was a $20,000 gift he'd burned through in 6 months. He was all promise and no capital. He met Eleonora Rossi at a Sotheby's auction. He was there to try and schmooze a developer. She was there as an expert, consulting for the museum on the authenticity of a Caravaggio sketch. He saw her, quiet, intelligent, with an aura of old-world grace. He mistook her subtlety for naivete. He laid on the charm. He spoke of his vision. Hotels that weren't just rooms, but experiences. He was, he admitted, struggling to find backers who could see the future. Eleonora, daughter of the Rossi Montara banking and shipping dynasty, knew a man desperate for capital when she saw one. Her family's money was ancient, and it was protected by layers of legal fortifications built over centuries. She wasn't naive. She was intrigued. She saw his raw ambition, his energy. It was a component she lacked. She was a guardian. He was a builder. She saw him as a potential asset, a high-risk, high-reward investment. She fell in love, too. He was exciting, passionate, and he seemed to adore her. He made her feel for the first time like more than just the keeper of a trust. After a 6-month whirlwind romance, she took him to the Villa St. Elmo, her family's ancestral home on Lake Como. It was there, overlooking the water, that she laid out the proposition. "I believe in your dream, James," she said, "and I want to help you build it." James was ecstatic. He was picturing a joint checking account, an unlimited credit line. What he got was a meeting with Mr. Bisset and 3 Swiss lawyers. Mr. Bisset was the septuagenarian director of the Rossi Family Trust. He explained the situation in dry, emotionless terms. "The St. Elmo Trust, Mr. Vance," Bisset said, "is the financial entity that manages the Rossi family's assets. It is considerable. Ms. Rossi is the sole director. She wishes to allocate $150 million as seed capital for your hotel venture." James almost fainted. "However," Bisset continued, "the trust does not give money. It invests, and it protects its investments. You will be the CEO of the new C Corp. You will be its face. You will be paid a very, very generous salary, tied to profits. But you will be an employee. The trust will hold 100% of the equity. All assets, the buildings, the land, the brand itself, will be assets of the trust." James's heart sank. "So I'm just a manager." "You are the CEO, James," Eleonora said, placing her hand on his. "It's your vision. This is just how my family does things. To protect us, to protect the legacy. It's just a legal structure." Then came the prenuptial agreement. It was prepared by Bisset's team. James's new, high-powered lawyer, Matthew Thorne, whose retainer was paid by James's first salary draw from the trust, reviewed it. "It's ironclad, James," Thorne said. "She's locking down all her family money. You get nothing if you divorce. But I added a clause that, in the event of dissolution, you retain your 1% profit share and your title as CEO. You'll still be a very rich man." But Thorne, a New York divorce lawyer, had missed the trap. He'd missed the codicil to the codicil. It was Eleonora herself who had requested the final clause in a private meeting with Bisset. "He is a passionate man," Eleonora had said, her pragmatism outweighing her romance. "And he is about to become very, very attractive to the world. I want a guarantee of his focus." She called it the Nightingale Protocol, named after a small, territorial bird that sings beautifully but fiercely defends its nest. Article 7. The Fidelity Clause. It stipulated that the marriage was a core component of the business agreement. His role as CEO was contingent on his undivided loyalty to the trust's director, Eleonora. If he breached that loyalty through infidelity, the trust had the right to terminate his employment, void his profit share, and reclaim all non-personal assets. It was a corporate morality clause disguised in a marriage contract. "Is this strictly necessary, Miss Rossi?" Bisset had asked. "Men like James, Mr. Bisset," Eleonora replied, "only respect boundaries they cannot cross. This one must be made of steel." James, blinded by the $150 million check and the promise of his own empire, signed the agreement without a second thought. He was in love. He would never cheat. It was just paper. For 15 years it was just paper. He built the empire, fueled by the bottomless well of the St. Elmo Trust. He built it, and he began to believe his own myth. He believed he was the source of the money. He forgot that he was just the charismatic frontman for an ancient, silent, and infinitely more powerful entity, Eleonora Rossi's inheritance. The final hearing for the dissolution of Vance versus Vance was the hottest ticket in the New York legal world. The courtroom was packed. The press lined the halls. James Vance, looking gaunt and haggard, sat with Matthew Thorne. He'd had to sell his $1.2 million brokerage account just to pay Thorne's preliminary fees. In the gallery, he spotted Serafina Hayes. She wasn't there for him. She was there for the cameras, likely being paid for a tell-all interview afterward. Then Eleonora entered. She was not the quiet, background-hued wife. She wore a striking blood-red Dior suit. She looked, in a word, gubernatorial. She was flanked by Amelia Harding and, to the surprise of everyone, the elderly, imposing Swiss gentleman, Mr. Bisset, who had been flown in from Geneva. The judge, a no-nonsense woman named Judge Maria Hayes, reviewed the reams of paperwork. "Mr. Thorne," Judge Hayes said, "I have reviewed your 400-page motion claiming Mr. Vance's sweat equity entitles him to 50% of the Vance Hotel Group, which your own experts value at $8.4 billion. It's a bold claim. Please proceed." Matthew Thorne, trying to regain his footing, launched into a passionate speech. "Your Honor, for 15 years, James Vance was Vance Hotels. His name, his vision, his genius. He took a single investment and spun it into a global phenomenon. Eleonora Vance, by her own admission, was an art historian. She planned parties. She picked out curtains. To claim she owns this empire is a fiction, a gross injustice. He is the brand. He is the company," he concluded, offering their new settlement. "Mr. Vance, in his magnanimity, is willing to cede 50% of the company to Mrs. Vance. He will take the other 50% and his title, and she will be the richest silent partner in history," the courtroom murmured. Judge Hayes looked at Amelia Harding. "Ms. Harding." Amelia Harding stood. "Thank you, Your Honor. We reject the offer. And Mr. Thorne is correct about one thing. This is a fiction." She turned to James. "The fiction is that Mr. Vance was ever a partner. The fiction is that he was ever a visionary with his own company. Your Honor, this is not a high-asset divorce. It is a high-asset foreclosure." Harding continued. "We are not here to divide marital assets, because there are none. The penthouse, the private jet, the art, the cars, they were not theirs. They were and are 100% owned by a single entity. My client's opponent, she gestured to James, is not his wife. It is the St. Elmo Trust. Objection, Thorne roared. You can't make a Swiss trust the primary party in a New York divorce. You can, Harding replied coolly, when the trust is the sole employer and equity holder of both parties. Your Honor, we are not asking for a division. We are informing the court of a termination of employment. Mr. Vance was an employee. He was fired. For cause. We are here today to prove that he is entitled to 0 assets from his former employer. This was the bombshell. James wasn't a billionaire. He was a W-2 employee who had been fired for sleeping with an intern. Harding called her first and only witness. I call Mr. Friedrich Bisset to the stand. Bisset, sworn in, was the perfect witness. He was dry, precise, and utterly unassailable. For 2 hours he, as the 40-year director of the trust, laid out the entire financial structure. Mr. Vance, Harding asked, was hired in 2008 as CEO of the Vance Project, a portfolio owned by the trust. Correct? Correct, Bisset replied. What was his starting salary? $1 million per year, plus a 1% profit share bonus, contingent on performance and adherence to his contract. And the prenuptial agreement, Harding continued. Can you explain its connection to his employment? Very simple, Bisset said, adjusting his glasses. The Rossi family does not separate personal and financial matters. They are one and the same. Ms. Rossi's marriage was an investment, like any other. The Nightingale Protocol in Article 7 was the insurance policy on that investment. It ensured the CEO's stability and loyalty. It was a standard key man clause, albeit one with a fidelity component. And when Mr. Vance admitted to his affair and filed for divorce, he triggered the clause, Bisset said. His 1% bonus was nullified, retroactive 1 year from the first date of the proven infidelity. His employment was terminated. As such, he is entitled to no severance, no profit share, and no assets purchased with trust funds. Which is all of them. James looked like he was going to faint. She planned this, he whispered to Thorne. She planned this from the beginning. Thorne, for the first time in his career, was silent. He had no counter-argument. The documents were signed by his client. The money trail was undisputed. The empire James claimed to have built was nothing more than a long-term, high-stakes job. And he had just been fired in the most public way imaginable. This is an outrage, James suddenly roared, standing up so fast his chair screeched. A setup. She's an art historian. She doesn't know anything about finance. Bisset, you did this. You manipulated her. You manipulated me. Amelia Harding didn't flinch. Your Honor, Mr. Vance's outburst is noted, but his characterization of Ms. Vance is incorrect. We submit as evidence Ms. Vance's MBA dissertation from INSEAD, 2006. The title, A Structural Analysis of Sovereign Wealth Funds and Private Family Trusts. It seems Ms. Vance knows quite a bit about finance. Another gavel bang. James sank back into his chair, defeated. But Harding wasn't finished. She wanted to salt the earth. And now, Your Honor, to the matter of the breach itself. Mr. Thorne has argued his client's personal life is irrelevant. We will prove it is the only thing that is relevant. What followed was a meticulous, soul-crushing presentation of James's affair. It wasn't just a private investigator's photos of James and Serafina entering a hotel. It was a forensic accounting of their relationship. We present Exhibit A, Harding said, a $450,000 Cartier Panthère necklace purchased for Ms. Hayes. Mr. Vance claimed this was a corporate gift, but it was purchased on the business trip to Mykonos, which logs show Ms. Hayes attended. Exhibit B, the lease on Ms. Hayes's West Village apartment, a $30,000 a month property. The lease was paid for not by Mr. Vance, but by Vance Holdings International, a clear misappropriation of corporate funds for personal use. Exhibit C, 3 years of text messages between Mr. Vance and Ms. Hayes, subpoenaed from his corporate phone. In them, he not only outlines his romantic intentions, but discusses getting rid of the old wife and starting fresh, once he solidifies his control. He was, Your Honor, actively conspiring to defraud the trust, using the trust's own money. This was the kill shot. It wasn't just adultery, it was premeditated, financial malfeasance. In the gallery, Serafina Hayes's face went white. She wasn't just the other woman. She was a co-conspirator in a fraud case. She stood up, slipped past the reporters, and bolted from the courtroom. Judge Hayes had heard enough. She didn't even take a recess. "Mr. Vance," the judge began, her voice ringing with judicial fury, "for 15 years you have been living a life funded entirely by your wife's family legacy. You were not a partner, you were a steward, and you have proven yourself to be a profoundly faithless one in both your marriage and your business. Your countersuit claiming 50% ownership is dismissed, with prejudice. The prenuptial agreement, including the Nightingale Protocol, is found to be valid, binding, and executed. Your employment and all financial stakes in the Vance Hotel Group and its parent companies are hereby terminated, effective as of the date of your infidelity. You will vacate the penthouse. Oh wait, you've already been evicted. You will cease and desist using the Vance name in any professional capacity, as the brand trademark is an asset of the trust. This court orders you to return the $1.2 million from your personal brokerage account, as it was proven to be a direct transfer from a profit share bonus you were not entitled to. You will also—" James wasn't listening. He was watching his wife. Eleonora stood up, gathered her purse, and without a single look back at the man she had made, and just unmade, walked out of the courtroom. The judge continued, "But it was just noise." James Vance, the billionaire titan, was a man with nothing but a borrowed suit and a mountain of legal debt. He was, in legal and financial terms, a non-entity. The aftermath of Judge Hayes's ruling was not a story. It was a detonation. The moment the courtroom doors opened, James Vance was consumed. A blinding wall of flashbulbs erupted, the rapid-fire thwack, thwack, thwack of 100 cameras sounding like a firing squad. Reporters, no longer held back by court officers, surged forward, shoving microphones into his face. "James, is it true you were just an employee? Mr. Vance, what will you do now? Are you penniless? Is it true you were fired for cheating?" He was paralyzed. His entire life, these people had been his chorus, an adoring crowd. Now they were a mob, and they were tearing him apart. He looked desperately for Matthew Thorne, but his lawyer had slipped out a side door, leaving him to the wolves. James shoved a cameraman, an act that would be replayed on TMZ for weeks, and sprinted for the stairwell, too disoriented to wait for an elevator. He ran down 12 flights of stairs, his borrowed suit soaked in a cold sweat. He burst out onto the street, only to find another pack of journalists waiting. He flagged a taxi, screaming at the driver to just go. Go! He had the driver take him to the Vance Soho. It was the only home he could think of. He walked into the lobby, his tie askew, his face a mask of pale, waxy fury. The manager, a young man James himself had promoted, intercepted him before he reached the elevators. "Mr. Vance," the manager said, his voice trembling. "Sir, I can't let you go up." "Get out of my way, David," James snarled. "Give me the penthouse key." "Sir, we received a communication from corporate. From the St. Elmo Group. You're on a permanent trespass list for all properties, globally." David looked physically ill. "Sir, please, don't make me call security." James stared at him. The man he had hired, in the lobby he had built, was telling him to leave. The humiliation was so profound, so absolute, it was almost paralytic. He turned, the lobby spinning around him, and walked back out onto the street. He had nowhere to go. The Forbes article landed the next day. It was a brutal, meticulous correction of their own 2019 cover story. The original was titled "The Hotel King." The new one, "The Billion-Dollar Employee, How James Vance Faked His Way to the Top." The New York Post, with its typical lack of subtlety, simply blared, "From CEO to zero, the Vance Ishing Act." His financial ruin was swift and total. Matthew Thorne, furious at the public humiliation and the discovery that his client had lied to him for 15 years about the prenup, sued James for $4.8 million unpaid legal fees. The court, having already ruled James's assets were never his, placed a lien on the only thing he truly owned, the $1.2 million in his personal brokerage account. It was seized and liquidated, every cent going to Thorne. Judge Hayes had been merciful. She hadn't ordered him to repay all the misappropriated funds, only the most recent. The trust, it seemed, was content to simply have him gone. He called Serafina. He called her 22 times. Each call went straight to voicemail. He went to her apartment, the $30,000 a month duplex he had leased for her. The doorman just shook his head. "Miss Hayes moved out, sir, 2 days ago. Left no forwarding address." A week later, he saw her. A paparazzi shot on page 6. Not of him, but of her, walking out of a yoga studio in Santa Monica, beaming. Her Instagram bio, which had once read "Global Ambassador, Vance Hotels," was scrubbed. It now read "Survivor, Healer, Entrepreneur, Living My Authentic Truth." James, staying on the fold-out couch of a college friend he hadn't spoken to in a decade, threw his phone against the wall. While James's world imploded, Eleonora's consolidated. The day after the hearing, she arrived at the 70th floor penthouse. The locks were changed, and the staff, who had always been on her payroll, greeted her with a quiet, profound relief. She walked into the grand salon, the site of the confrontation. Then she went to James's sprawling office, a room of dark mahogany, Scottish leather, and brooding oil paintings of naval battles. A massive 10-foot portrait of James himself, commissioned for his 50th birthday, hung on the wall. The air was thick with the scent of his expensive, spicy cologne and cigar smoke. She opened the window, letting the cold November air rush in. Amelia Harding and Mr. Bissett arrived an hour later. "The executive team is terrified," Amelia said, opening her briefcase. "They were all his people. They're expecting a bloodbath." "There will be no bloodbath," Eleonora said. "Just a change in management. Mr. Bissett, please authorize the sale of the Gulfstream jet and the Vance Racing sponsorship. They're vulgar. Liquidate them and use the capital to fund the employee pension, which I see James has neglected." "At once, Miss Rossi," Bissett replied, a rare, thin smile on his face. "Amelia," Eleonora continued, "I want a new design firm in here by noon. I want this entire floor gutted. The leather, the wood, this monument," she gestured to James's portrait. "I want it all gone. I prefer light, function, and Italian modernism. My office will be a place of work, not a mausoleum for one man's ego." She walked over to the desk and picked up a silver-framed photo of her and James, taken at the St. Regis opening in Venice. They looked happy. He had his arm around her, and she was smiling. It felt like a photo of two strangers. She looked at it for a long, quiet moment. A flicker of sadness not for the man, but for the time. For the naive girl who thought she could invest in a man's character. She sighed, then opened a drawer and placed the photo inside, face down. She closed it. "And Amelia," Eleonora said, turning back, her voice all business. "Schedule a global town hall for this afternoon. I'll address all 14,000 employees. It's time they met the real owner." 6 months passed. The company, now firmly under the St. Elmo Group umbrella, did not falter. It soared. Eleonora Rossi, it turned out, was not just an art historian with an MBA. She was a ruthless, brilliant operator. She hadn't been idle for 15 years. She had been the silent partner in the most literal sense, managing the actual wealth, the complex trust investments in tech, shipping, and construction that had propped up the Vance brand. James had been playing with the house's money. She was the house. She cut the fat. The vanity projects, the celebrity chef restaurants that bled money, the absurd ambassador programs. She reinvested the capital into technology, sustainability, and staff. She was the anti-James. He operated on ego and risk. She operated on data and strength. The market, once it realized the visionary was gone and the capital was now in charge, responded with confidence. The brand's bond rating went up a full letter grade. As for James, he had vanished. After the lawsuit from Thorne, he was truly penniless. He was last spotted by a single, lucky tabloid photographer, arguing with a landlord in the lobby of a rundown, pre-war apartment building in Yonkers. The photo was a tragedy. The King of New York was gaunt, his silver hair now a patchy, unkempt grey. He had aged 15 years. He was wearing a cheap parka over a stained sweater. The man who once ruled an $8.4 billion empire was fighting over a security deposit. That was the last anyone heard of him. The invitations went out in early May. The business world was gathering once again, this time for a press conference in the grand lobby of the flagship hotel on Fifth Avenue. The lobby was unrecognizable. The dark, masculine tones were gone, replaced with soaring white marble, minimalist Italian furniture, and a stunning, museum-quality installation of a modern sculpture. The press was packed, shoulder to shoulder. They weren't here for a scandal. They were here for the coronation. A hush fell as Eleonora walked to the podium. She was not the quiet, background-hued wife from the galas. She wore a striking, blood-red Dior suit that screamed power. Her hair was pulled back in a severe, elegant chignon. Around her neck, the only jewelry she wore were the Rossi sapphires, the heirloom she'd worn that last, fateful night at the gala. They were a message. The family was back in charge. She was not Eleonora Vance. The name on the placard read, Eleonora Rossi, Chairwoman and CEO, the St. Elmo Group. "Good morning," she began. Her voice was calm, clear, and amplified by the speakers, filling the vast space. It was the first time most of the world had ever truly heard her speak. For 15 years, this company operated under a brand that emphasized a single personality. It was a brand built on audacity, risk, and a cult of personality. That era is over. She paused, letting the words land. The future of this company is not about ego. It is about legacy. It is not about one man's vision. It is about the enduring strength of the family and the trust that built it. We are returning to the core principles of our foundation: stability, intelligent growth, and a return to true, uncompromising luxury. She gestured to the wall behind her, where a massive, black-draped sign hung over the reception desk. As of today, The Vance Hotel's name and brand are permanently retired. We are rebranding. We are returning to our roots. We are honoring the legacy that built this company from day one. On cue, the black drape fell away. High above the lobby, the familiar, sharp Vance logo was gone. In its place, in elegant, classic script that spoke of old money and timeless class, was the new name. The Rossi Grand. The flashbulbs were blinding. This was the final act. She hadn't just taken his money and his company. She had taken his name, the only thing he thought was his, and erased it from the skyline. A reporter from the Wall Street Journal got the first question. "Ms. Rossi, an incredible turnaround. But the question everyone has is, what would you say to your ex-husband, James Vance, if you could speak to him today?" Eleonora looked directly into the camera. There was no malice in her eyes, no anger, just the cold, placid calm of a problem solved. A small, knowing smile touched her lips. "I would thank him," she said, her voice cutting through the room. "He was an excellent, if temporary, brand manager. He proved a valuable, if costly, hypothesis that a strong brand cannot be built on a weak character. And he taught me a valuable lesson. If you want to protect your empire, you must be willing to rule it yourself." She held the gaze of the press for one more beat. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a Q3 earnings call to prepare for." She did not wait for another question. She turned from the podium and walked, not into the crowd, but toward the private elevator bank. Her team, Amelia Harding, Mr. Bissett, and her new COO, fell in step behind her. She didn't look back. She walked through the doors of the boardroom to the head of the massive marble table and took her seat. She didn't just take back her money. She took back her name, her power, and her throne. What a takedown. James Vance learned the hardest way possible. Never, ever underestimate the woman standing in the shadows. He thought he was the king, but he was just a high-paid employee. Eleonora didn't just get revenge. She got her entire $8.4 billion empire back, and she did it without raising her voice. She simply enforced the contract. James's ego wrote a check that his wife's bank account had to cash, and she finally decided to close the account. What do you think? Was this the most calculated, ice-cold corporate takedown in history? Or was James Vance the architect of his own spectacular downfall? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you love stories of epic justice and unbelievable true-life dramas, make sure to hit that like button. Share this story with anyone who needs to see it. And most importantly, hit subscribe and ring that bell. You won't want to miss the next story we uncover.